second month of the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the things that all of us are feeling right now is an increase in depression and stress in our lives. Now that's situational, and we can all understand with our current geopolitical situation that there is a lot of stress in the world. There's no way of getting about it. And most of us are having to dig a little deeper in our coping mechanism bags. I'm here to help you with those issues today. And right now, we're going to cover the definition of depression. I did print out a clinical overview of what clinical depression is. One of the guidelines in my overview on mental health, I'm going to be repeating this over and over again, is all of us go through these range of emotions. It's part of the human experience. The thing that makes clinical depression and all other mental exacerbations rely on three basic metrics. And that is frequency, duration, and intensity. Now, all of us have depression in our lives. It's necessary. We can't experience joy without depression. Think about it. If we only have sugar in our lives with no bitterness, we don't have the range to understand where it is. And the same thing applies with depression. All of us have situations in our lives where sadness encroaches. The definition of clinical depression is a little more defined, but let's kind of see what the DSM-3 has for us. This is what psychiatrists use to gauge whether a person falls under clinical depression. And again, it's feelings of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness, or hopelessness, angry outburst, irritability or frustration, even over small matters, the loss of interest in most normal activities, including your hobbies, sports, even sex. Often it involves sleepless nights, including insomnia, or sometimes the opposite, where people want to just bury themselves into their sleep. Often depression involves tiredness, a lack of energy, even small tasks are too much effort. Sometimes you have weight loss. Sometimes you have weight gain. Often weight gain is the outcome because we have these cravings, we have these desires, and we want to kind of fill them. And often we use food as the filler. We notice with people with clinical depression, they have slow thinking, speaking, or body movements. They are filled with feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness, guilt, fixating on past failures, and blame. They have trouble thinking, concentrating, making decisions, and remembering things. Frequent or reoccurring thoughts of death or suicidal thoughts. Suicide attempts or even suicide are often outcomes of severe depression. And there's physical problems related with depression. We won't get into how it affects our immune system, but it does. It suppresses us, makes us open to disease. And it also includes physical pains. I've had most of my clients that are severely depressed, and even myself have gone through a vague pain where you can't really put your finger on it, but you know it hurts and you know it's due to your anxiety and depression issues. Often it involves our relationships with ourselves and others, our school, our work, and our social activities. Clinical depression can affect all of us at any age. Children often have symptoms. We all go through it. Now, when we go through depression and it gets to the point where it's affecting our lives, often our first line is to approach our physician or family members or friends. We live in an American society where, unfortunately, we look for relief in the form of a pill form. So when we go to see a professional regarding depression, uh, the approach is to get the most that they can, the maximum results with the least amount of expense. And right now, that is antidepressants. Because when you go to see your doctor and you explain that you're feeling depressed, the best things that work for depression are not in the form of a pill. They involve you doing something. Now, one of the things I learned early on in my medical career is that when you ask people to do something other than take a pill, the sad part is you have about a 5 to 7% utilization rate. So that leaves 95 to 97% of the people will not be able to or motivated enough to do the other things other than taking a pill. So when you approach your doctor, the first thing they're going to say is, here's a medication for you. Here's an antidepressant. And the object of the antidepressants are to raise our serotonin levels in our body. That's what they're all called, serotonin uptake or serotonin inhibitors. And they want to give us more of the hormones that make us feel good. Your epinephrines, our warm hug hormones, they want to increase those, your serotonin levels. However, that's the thrust of antidepressants. The empirical evidence is far behind that. Even with the limits of medication, most physicians will recommend lifestyle changes, and those are the most difficult to implement. As you know, as we talked about depression, we mentioned the low energy levels. You're in a kind of a hole in a cave, and it's really hard to pull yourself out. So the doctors will give us an antidepressants in the hopes that that'll get us out of it. Like I said, the evidence is lacking. However, they do put antidepressants mildly ahead of the placebo effect. And we're going to cover that next. What they found is that antidepressants usually work 3 to 5% better than a placebo effect. Can you imagine that? Only 3 to 5% better than the placebo effect. So what we're going to cover today are more along the lines of practical things that you can do for depression. What you'll find out with practical things that you do for depression, there are no side effects. And if you can implement these things, the benefits will start to show pretty rapidly. Let's go back to the mental aspects of the placebo effect. Let's cover how Big Pharma works. They report after report I've read about antidepressants is that Big Pharma will do a dozen studies on, say, Prozac, and 10 of the studies show that Prozac works about the placebo effect or less. 2 of the studies show that Prozac does 3 to 5% better than the placebo or the sugar pill. So what Big Pharma does is they throw out the 10 studies that show non-benefit and only present the 2 that show mild benefits. And you don't have to change the world on these events with Big Pharma. You just have to show 3 to 5% better than the placebo. So let's go ahead and not knock antidepressants, but realize they've got limitations and side effects. Okay, let's go on to other things we can do, like the placebo effect. Now, this is something I don't want to discount. Our brain is our biggest healer in our body. We discount it every day. We take it for granted. We just assume we wake up and this magical thing does our thinking for us. Now, I'm going to tell you that it doesn't do our thinking for us as much as it does our thinking that we allow it to. All of our brains like to go on negative tangents. Okay, we have, I know, tens of thousands of thoughts a day, and often we feel victim to what our brain leads us to, our thought patterns. And what I'm going to tell you now is what I tell my patients over the years is to stop that stinking thinking and to throughout your day, program your brain to focus on things you want to focus on. You can do that right now. Think of a lemon. When you think of a lemon, often you will have in your mouth, you'll start salivating. Your brain often, when it thinks of a lemon, will go through the same things that when you're actually eating a lemon. It won't take much for you to close your eyes and imagine an airplane roar. Okay, and when you put the monitors on our heads, you'll find out that if we imagine an airplane roar, a baby's cry, our first kiss, often in our brain, it's very much like it's really happening. So rather than bathe in the things that we don't want in our lives, I'm giving you the permission to take your brain and put it on a program or a channel that you would prefer. I like the Travel Channel. I like shows on adventure and nature. So I often will put my brain towards something along those lines. We all have, the life will take us down that trail. It's going to be up to us to uplift it. Okay. Side effects of antidepressants. Let's talk about some of those while we're on it. Side effects of antidepressants are low libido, often, a dulling of our surroundings. And the other thing that happens, like everything else, if we take a pill, our body suppresses its own abilities to heal itself. So we want to have as few outside interventions and more internal healing if we can. While we're talking about depression, let's also talk about what we can do about it. That one of the best things they found, this is the best thing, this is the new neuroscience, is we want to bathe our brain in we want to program it to focus on more positive, okay? More positive outcomes, more positive outlooks. And what they found, let me kind of give you an example. On this hand, we've got hate, and on this hand, we've got love. They seem like they're opposite on the polar extremes. However, we find out when you add love to hate, it kind of dissipates. They're finding out that hate is an absence of love. So if you start pouring in love, well, sure enough, things that surround hate and anger in our lives start diminishing. What the new science has is, on this hand, we've got depression, and on this hand, we've got gratitude. The new neurosciences are focusing on gratitude. It helps to diminish depression. It turns out much of depression is an absence of gratitude in our lives. So what can we do to focus on things we have to be grateful for? I read a book a decade ago, before this got to be such a frequent therapy, was a book on how to focus on gratitude. And what gratitude training helps us to do, it helps us to bring that glass from being half empty to half full. We start focusing on things we have in our life rather than things we don't have in our life. And the easiest gratitude training that is offered today is, when you start your day, they want you to come up with 5 things to be grateful for. And at first, that's a pretty easy scenario. But what they want you to do when you really get into gratitude training is come up with 5 different things every day to be grateful for. So at first, it's pretty easy. You like your family, you like your house, you like your health, hopefully. You like some of your relatives, or you've got a nice meal in front of you and you're grateful for. So initially, it's a pretty easy thing to kind of come up with 5 things to be grateful for. But as the days progress, it becomes more and more of a niche type thing where you're actually seeking out things in your life to be grateful for. For example, my computer's working today. One example I use over the years is I remember years ago when my refrigerator went kaput, okay? You ever have a refrigerator go out on you? You've got hundreds of dollars worth of groceries in there. They're dripping, starting to melt. You don't really have a whole lot of time to find a refrigerator until those hundreds of dollars worth of groceries are trash. So it's a big scramble. And when you get that new refrigerator, it's like, oh, it's so nice to have my refrigerator. We're in Florida, and we've all had to go through hurricane season, and many of us have had electrical disruptions in our lives. And we realize without electricity, that life can be a lot more arduous. So for example, you wouldn't sit there and have gratitude for your refrigerator normally, but when you've had one go out recently, you're going, man, my refrigerator's running. You know the old thing where you used to do prank calls and you would call somebody and say, is your refrigerator running? Go ahead and run out and catch it. But actually, if your refrigerator is running, it's something to be grateful for. Now, that's something you can do one day. I personally, a lot of people who know me talk about how I enjoy showers. I profess I enjoy hot water. So I have gratitude for hot water kind of regularly. So gratitude training is something that you can do. It takes about 5 minutes out of your morning. You wake up and you list 5 things, and better yet, write them down. Write them on a sheet of paper. We're finding journaling, writing things down, give that mind-brain connection additional reinforcement. Next are some other things we can do for depression. And this is going to be a whole topic in itself. I have become a true believer in diet and exercise. I have people that also know me know that I profess to be gluten-free, and diet is becoming more and more part of depression interventions. What they're finding out now also is our gut and our brain have a direct line of connection. You've all known when you get sick to your stomach, when you get anxiety. So gut health is it's going to be a whole talk on itself. But one of the things that is going to be important in dealing with clinical depression or even our general moods is going to be diet and exercise. You have to implement that at all stages of life. The hard part is when you're depressed, how do you get that oomph? How do you get started? All right, well, that's another topic. How do you get started when you're in the hole? And how do you motivate yourself when you're feeling so down? Well, we have to start somewhere, and that's all I'm going to tell you. Take baby steps, start on what works for you, start on what's easier, and when we make them part of our daily routines, then they become less and less noticeable and less of an effort. So when you start that morning gratitude training, people like me that have been doing it for years, it becomes part of my daily thought process. I often call friends with thanking them. I often look out on the weather. You will see me raising my hands in joy on beautiful spring and summer days. I'm kind of joyful these days when it rains. We haven't had it so long. But the thing is to find joy in life, joy in our daily activities, joy in ourselves. Next, we're going to talk about some of the things and other things we can do, when you're in a hole, 5 things to be grateful for is not that tough a task. Another thing that I recommend to all my patients, and this is not just from myself, it's from again, neurosciences and ways to counteract depression and anxiety, are 15 minutes of sunshine. Of course, we want us all to get exercise, but many of us can't even do that. Many of us have physical limitations. We can't seem to get our body in motion, or we have become so sedentary for so long, it's just too much for us. So if you're at that stage, first off, I recommend walking. And walking can be as simple as going to your mailbox, and then it can be a little bit further. And for my elderly patients, I do recommend stretching that walk further and further. Again, you have to do it in certain times of the day. We live in Florida, so mornings and evenings this time of year are the best times to get a little exercise when it's a little cooler outside. The other thing is staying connected. This has been one of the things to help us reduce depression that has been found. If we can stay connected with family, friends, our community, society, our church, any other social activities, volunteering has been shown to be the best thing for depression. You think you've got it bad. It doesn't take long when you're volunteering to realize how lucky you are that you won't have to go far to find somebody who's got it much worse off than you. They're coping, they're surviving, they're making the best of their situation. It's the least you can do to live their example. Okay, so being connected is easier said than done, but it's something that is one of the tenet things of being not depressed or living a fruitful life. I'm one of these people that have spent a lot of time on a solo sailboat. I've lived in the Bahamas on my own for years, and I became kind of an island man, I'll tell you that. And for me, it took repeated readings to understand that being connected is essential to overall well-being. Okay, and the thing about being connected is it doesn't take much. Look at today's society. Here we are in a global pandemic. I just heard on the radio the other day that the food banks are just going bonkers and trying to find help these days. They said that they're able to give social distancing and provide safety for their volunteers, but volunteers, the food banks are being overwhelmed with our current political and social downturns, but they also, more and more people are relying on them. And I can tell you, I've helped in a food bank before, and it does give you that sense of joy, that sense of helping others. And that's one of the best things we can do to help ourselves, is to help others. So overall, I'm going to kind of recap some of the things that we can do for our own clinical depression. Again, is diet and exercise. We all need it. We all crave it. And we need it at all stages. So get out there and move. Get some sunshine. Connect with your family. These are things that we can all do every day. Get that brain to thinking what we want in our lives, not what we don't want. And this is one of the truisms. What we think and do is what we become. So keep that in mind in your futures. Think and become a joyful, positive person. Think and become a joyful, gratitude-oriented person that helps in our society. Think and become a person who is surrounded by abundance in our lives. Think and become a happy person. Think and become a joyful person. That's our lesson today. It takes practice. Namaste, and you can do it. Call us if you have any questions. Give me a call. I'll be glad to help you for free.